Ekam attaram hrudi nirantaram bhavasute swayam likyate katham. Hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam brahmanatram jaham iti sakha atmarupena bhati hridisha manasa svam chinvata majjata anacharanarodha atmanishto avatvam. Deham mrunmaya jada aham buddhirna tasya sthitu naham tattata bhavashukti samay siddha masaddha kudo dhiya drishta drishta mana soham spurtitaya aruna chala shiva purno vibhavati swayam soham spurtitaya aruna chala shiva purno vibhavati swayam. Namo Ramana. With Bhagavan Siddham's praise, we have been meditating on the work Vivekachoodamani, the original being in Sanskrit by Adi Shankara, and the translation in free prose form by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. We have taken upon ourselves the possibility of covering about 20 verses in a satsang. We have come up to verse number 53. So our aim shall be to go up to 75 or 76th verse, which gives us some kind of closure on a particular topic, at least up to the inquiry about the body, about the senses. How do we launch on to this segment? It is based on the inquiry by the Sishya. In the preceding segment, the Sishya asks, "Oh Master, what is bondage? How is it come? How does it survive? How is it to be destroyed? What is the non-self? And what indeed is the self? And what is discrimination between self and non-self? Graciously bless me with your answers to these questions. And the Acharya, the Guru, is extremely happy about these questions, and he assures he is going to give an answer which is going to take the Shishya beyond the ocean of bondage or samsara. We start this segment. You should not be surprised if this segment looks somewhat like the rejection of all other paths that you will be hearing in some parts of Buddhism, where Buddha would have gone to a place and Kalama or some place, and in his teachings, he would have said, don't rely on this authority, don't rely on that authority, don't rely on what you see, don't rely on the scriptures, don't rely on the teachers, like that. And this segment that we are going to go through is going to be like that. But he is going to put us on to something at the core of Vivekachoodamani. So don't get any kind of disturbance about this segment. The Acharya is only making the other paths which we are so used to as unnecessary or irrelevant or incapable of giving direct benefits as coming self-knowledge. So with that backdrop in mind, you can listen to this segment initially, which is going to sound like that freeing from all authorities talk given by Buddha. But here the idea is to bring our focus to what is the main viveka between self and non-self. And all these teachings, mind you, the other approaches are all in the non-self, in the area of non-self. So he is going to relentlessly take us through these various approaches and say that they can never be the same as direct realization of the self. So let us go into the 54th verse. However learned a man may be, he cannot rid himself of the ignorance born of desire and fate, except by realizing the Brahman through his own self-knowledge. How does it help you that others see the moon? You must open your eyes and see it yourself. This is where the word sage is used by some translators. Bhagavan doesn't use that. Can you see the eyes through the eyes of a sage? You cannot see through the eyes of a sage is what the Acharya is saying in one of the translations. The word sage is a bit debatable. The idea is you can't use the authority of another person here. You have to directly see the truth yourself. And in Who Am I, Bhagavan would have asked, if you can recall, to know yourself as Rama, do you need the glasses? That means, does the Guru or Ishvara need to come and help you? So even Guru and Ishvara are taken away as authority by Bhagavan in Who Am I? They are not necessary. Bhagavan says that is going to be the thread that is going to be in this segment till we come to the segment of discrimination between self and non-self. He is going to bring us to that Viveka by taking away all other supports from us, but to give us the main support. Liberation cannot be obtained through Sankhya, yoga, ritual, or learning, but only through knowledge of oneness of Brahman and Atman. So go on. Sankhya means all the branches of the approaches to the Brahman, other than the approach of Vivekachoodamani, of the discrimination between self and nothing else as being concerned with the non-self cannot be obtained through Sankhya, yoga, ritual, learning, but only through the oneness of Brahman and Atman. So that means only to find your own truth as identical with the truth of Brahman, that is alone going to help. Let us take a small example before we go further here, there is this incident where T.K. Sundarashayar is sitting in front of Bhagwan and it is his 33rd or 34th birthday. He has been coming to the ashram for last 15-20 years. And in self-enquiry, in the Atmavachara, what happens is you don't feel any significant experience because all experiences are non-self and they would have had to be inquired away as non-self. So you can't remember or hold on to some experience of any significance. It would have got washed off in self-enquiry. So he will feel that for 20 years he has not had any spiritual experience in the presence of Bhagwan. In the presence of Bhagwan, there will be relentless turning inward towards the self. Now, he will express that in the form of a depression or a despondent feel, and Bhagwan will pick it up and ask, why, what is happening? And he'll say, oh, Bhagwan, I am coming for 20 years and I have not had any spiritual experience, whereas the others report this or that and all that. Then Bhagwan will give him a look from his eyes and it will turn T.K. Sundarashayar deeply inward till he has the Divya Chakshu to have the darshan of Pattabhiram, the darshan of the darshan had by Tyaga Brahmam or Tyagaraja Swamigal, the Pattabhishekam of Rama, that darshan. What is significant about these darshans is that they represent the Karana Sharira of Ishvara. That this darshan, these mantras are all so subtle that they permeate the whole universe. They are in the Anandamaya Kosha of Ishvara. Therefore, anybody who is having the Divya Chakshu to have this darshan is in that bliss of Ishvara, the Ananda Swarupa of Ishvara. For 2 hours, T.K. Sundarashayar is in that bliss, the bliss of the Karana Sharira of Ishvara, the Anandamaya Kosha of Ishvara. Bhagavan has got up and gone for his lunch and come back. He has not been disturbed. And after 2 hours, he comes out of the trance and Bhagavan says, Acha, Darshanam Acha. And he shows in the Ashtotram of Arunachala, in 90th or 92nd or 93rd Nama, Om Pattabhiramaya, to show that the Karana Sharira of Ishvara is the same energy, only the Nama with which you have approached it is different. But they all take us to that, the Ananda Swarupa of Ishvara. But then, have our vasanas been eliminated completely? Has our attachment to the non-self been eliminated completely? No. Therefore, that darshana remains temporary. What we have to understand significantly is that there is nothing denigrating in the darshana, but it is in our vasanas. So therefore, you could have darshan even before elimination of all the vasanas. Therefore, it will appear that that form is going away, and it is going away. That's why Bhagavan will simply say, to worship God with form, that darshan will go away. The Krishna played with by Punjaji will vanish. Is he here now? Bhagavan will ask. So therefore, even that darshana support is not the same as direct realization of the self. So we are taking on that the instance with T.K. Sundarashayar, who has actually had the darshan which took him to the Karana Sharira, the Anandamaya Kosha of Ishvara himself. But then the Vasana Kshaya is not complete in that, isn't it? Therefore, he is thrown out back into the normal experience. Whereas here, the only job is Vasana Kshaya. The only challenge or task taken up is the removal of the Vasanas. Till then, even if any Anubhava comes, you have to remove it with the for whom is this. So that is going to be the nature in which this segment is there. The next verse, just as the beautiful form of Veena and the music of its strings can give only pleasure for people but confer no kingdom on them. So also plausible works, clever arguments, ability to expound the scriptures, and erudition of the learned ones only give pleasure for the moment. Taken away. You can't listen to lectures. You can't keep on learning books, have subtle thoughts, and feel very happy about it, because those subtle thoughts almost take you near the Anandamaya Kosha of Ishvara. Therefore, there is a feeling of fragrance of that bliss in the intellect, and you fall for that. You feel that is the experience of freedom. Whereas the vasanas once again appear and take you towards the senses and the sensory world. Even the study of scriptures is useless, since it does not give the desired result. Once one knows the truth of the Supreme, study of the scriptures becomes unnecessary, because there is nothing more to be gained. Both before and after, the Acharya is saying, because it is in the area of the non-self, it is not going to give you direct self-knowledge, because this is Vivekachoodamani. Other than self-knowledge, it is not going to settle for anything. So reading of scriptures before enlightenment or before self-knowledge is useless, because it does not give the experience. After the experience, where is the need for scriptural knowledge? So the entire scriptural knowledge is put aside as a means. Don't get worried, he is going to give us the direct path. And for that, coming to the direct path, you necessarily have to put this aside and take that on. Therefore, one must pass over the great forest of Shastras, which only yields confusion of mind, and must instead actually experience the self through the Guru, the knower of reality. So the Shastras have to be eschewed. And Bhagavan comes to our aid again in Who Am I, when he is asked, is there any purpose in reading more and more Shastras, scriptures? Bhagavan says, all the scriptures tell only one thing: quiescence of the mind, quietude of the mind. And that can come by directly holding Who Am I? Where is the need for reading scriptures endlessly? The scriptures are present outside the Panchakoshas, and the Atma is present inside the Panchakoshas. How are you going to have self-knowledge? By reading something outside the Panchakoshas. More or less, that is his suggestion in Who Am I? And that is what the Acharya is saying here. That he is not suggesting the endless reading of scriptures. So one more area you can keep aside if you are, as you are coming to Vivekachoodamani. To the one who is bitten by the serpent of ignorance, salvation comes only from the discipline of self-knowledge, and not from Vedas, scriptures, incantations, or any other remedy. Now, this is significant because the Vedas are supposed to be the highest of scriptures for the Vedantin. The Veda contain both the kandas, both the parts, the Karma Kanda and the Upanishadic or Vedanta. But then Vedas put together have both. And here the Acharya is saying, for this particular inquiry into the Vivekachoodamani, the difference between the Viveka between self and non-self, even the study of Vedas is not required. That's why I put it before you. Don't get disturbed. The Acharya is going to sound like that Kalama Sutta, where all the authorities are put aside. That was for a different purpose. It is said that the audience were very confused and all that. Here it is for a different purpose. The Acharya is saying, for those who are mature enough, for those who are able to handle the fineness required in coming to the self, then picking up direct self-knowledge or the practices required for direct self-knowledge is the direct path or the most sensible thing to do. Just as a person's sickness is not removed without taking medicine, this is an analogy we have already seen in the previous segment, so too his state of bondage is not removed by the scriptural texts such as Aham Brahmasmi without his direct experience of the self. Now he's coming even closer. From outside, he is coming to the dhyana of the Mahavakyas. He's saying even the meditation of Mahavakyas or study of the Mahavakyas is not the same as the Vivekachoodamani. Is not the same as the crest jewel of wisdom the Acharya is going to give us. And Bhagavan, of course, mentions that in Ullad Narpada, that it is only because of lack ahasputam tattvamasi Vedaha. Once the Vedas have declared that thou art the self, the only thing to do is to inquire, who am I? The only thing is to inquire into what is this self. Instead of that, to say, I am not this, I am not the human being, I am not this body, but I am the Brahman, I am the Brahman, I am the Brahman, is because of the weakness of the tapasya. Is because there is not enough strength in that tapas. That is why you are going for the objective meditation. Whereas it is now for you to understand the depth of this viveka of self and non-self and directly go on to who am I. One does not become a king by merely saying I am a king without destroying one's enemies and obtaining the reality of power. Just by Bhagavan say one does not become a collector just by saying I'll be a collector, I'll be a collector, I'll be a collector. You will have to get the necessary qualifications. Similarly, the meditation on the Brahman, as I am Brahman, I am Brahman, we have not come to I am human being, I am human being by meditating on I am human being, I am human being. Only by rejecting that which is of lower experience, we have somehow, we could not have defined what is this human experience. From a lower experience, we could not have defined. So only by rejecting that which we are not, we unknowingly or without any definition of it have come upon human existence, and we don't need to keep saying I am human being, I am human being. Similarly, to come to the Brahmic or the Atmic experience, or the Atma and Brahman are one experience, one has to reject whatever is not the self. Whatever is not you has to be consciously looked at and rejected. And that coming upon the self is something natural. It is not given by another. A few minutes back, another Vichari from the opposite home, he had come down here, and we were discussing that what exactly is it to observe a thought. That in yesterday's walk in the park, we were discussing as to will you be able to observe a thought with your eyes? Will you be able to touch a thought with your hands? Obviously not. Obviously, the sensory body doesn't have the sensitivity to observe a thought, leave alone let it go. Therefore, we were inquiring yesterday, can you with your physical eyes observe a thought? Obviously not. Therefore, with what are you observing that thought? What is your form then? Is it the gross form of the body? Obviously not. You are of a form more subtler than that thought. So you should understand you don't need the gross body or its existence when you are observing thought. So there is an existence beyond the sensory body where the sensory body cannot come and do that for you, and you have to take a subtler form, just like T.K. Sundaresh Iyer was given the Divya Chakshu to have the darshan. Even with our normal practice, to observe a thought, to see that I am getting this thought. And for whom is this thought when I inquire? Obviously, I am not using the sensory body. I am not using the breath. I am not using the emotions. All these three types of forms that I could have taken, I have not taken, and I am subtler than that. And when I let go of that thought and put the attention on who am I, obviously it is a form much subtler than the seer of thought, is what we were discussing. And he was signing off by telling, Nandakumar, it is through you that I got this information. And we shared the fact that the self is already in you. This data would have come from some other place also in the outside. But to feel that it has come from outside is once again coming back to the non-self. So it is my duty to tell you that I have not given you anything new, that it is already inside you. It had come out in the form of a question. We have only discussed, and you have inquired your way back to your reality. And only by doing that, I can get back to the reality. Because if I say I have given you, then that is having the falsity of non-self giving the self, and that is not possible. It is already in you, and that is what is mentioned here, that similarly, one does not obtain liberation merely by repeating I am Brahman without destroying the duality caused by ignorance and directly experiencing the self. That it is received from another is an error. So Bhagavan would always keep saying that the Guru is not the physical form outside you. In that, the Guru brings liberation both to the Sishya and paves the way for his own self-abidance. If he has any impulse or any intent to receive anything from the Sishya or from the world, obviously he doesn't have the natural abidance in the self. So you will find that the one who is the scripture that is teaching self-enquiry, or the one who has shared self-enquiry, automatically has to be self-effacing or humble in nature. Humility is a automatic nature of one who is abiding in the self, because there is no way he can say that he was of any relevance to the disciple coming to the self-knowledge. Self is something already present in the disciple. That spark is lit up, and the spark consumed any feeling that non-self has given this knowledge. So that would be always the ending point of any dialogue between Bhagavan and others, where he would say, in deep sleep, was this present? The form of the Guru, was it present? The form of the problem, was it present? But you were present. Therefore, inquire into what is your existence even beyond that the non-self of deep sleep. The deep sleep has effaced every other form, but it is still non-self because there is ignorance. For whom is that ignorance? Who has to inquire? Can somebody else who is all part of that ignorance, can they come and inquire for you? Obviously not. Therefore, similarly, one does not obtain liberation by merely repeating that I am Brahman without destroying the duality of caused by ignorance and directly experiencing the self. There is no other way to come to self-knowledge. Then one more huge analogy about the treasure chest. We could have used the treasure chest analogy between Murali sir and I, where we could have said that the treasure is already in him. It is not that the treasure is given by somebody else. The treasure is already in each one of us. The friend is merely pointing out that here is the sand to be dug up, here is the lid of the treasure chest to be opened, then the treasure is yours. But then who has to do the digging up of the sand and the digging up and the lifting of the lid? One has to do it oneself. The friend who knows this area of self and non-self absolutely thoroughly knows that he doesn't have to give the self to the other, that the other is already the self of all, and all one has to do is to dredge up that inherent treasure in us. In each one of us, there is this absolute treasure of the self of all. It is not particular to any particular person. In that self of all the individuals come and merge. Nobody else needs to give self-knowledge to anybody. A treasure trove hidden under the ground is not obtained by merely hearing about it, but only by being told by a friend who knows it, and then digging and removing the slab that hides it and taking out from below the ground. Similarly, one must hear about one's true state from a guru who knows about Brahman, then meditate upon it, do Atmavachara, and experience it directly through constant meditation. Santatam. The meditation has to be constant. because the experience of the self is constant. Without this, the true form of one's own self that is hidden by Maya cannot be realized through mere argumentation. So, another support gone. Another support kept is dialoguing. We will endlessly keep dialoguing in satsang. What is this? What is that? That is not, that argumentation or dialoguing is not going to bring us to self-knowledge, because inherently dialoguing takes place in the self-non-self combination. Therefore, one has to, the dialoguing what it can best do, the argumentation what it can best do, it can point out to the treasure chest inside you, but what it is to throw out that the mud covering, what it is to lift up that lid and make that Chitjada Granthi completely cut asunder and the self reveal itself. Who has to do that? One has to turn inward oneself. Therefore, those who are wise themselves make every effort to remove the bondage of the individual existence and obtain liberation, just as they would get rid of some disease. So, he has put away all other supports. Scriptures gone, Vedas gone. Seeing through another person's eyes, whether he be a sage or a saint or a guru, you can't see through him. You have to see it with your own eyes. Seeing through the meditation on the I am Brahman, gone. Having dialogues and arguments with each other, gone. And anybody claiming that I am going to give it to you, in what form? It's only to make you see the already existing treasure chest, which you are ignoring, by looking for it in the non-self. So, beloved disciple, the Acharya has come to the end of this segment of removing all other false supports as far as Atmaucharam is concerned. All the other supports he has removed. People removed. Scriptures removed. Even meditation on the Mahavakyas removed. He is going to give us a Chudamani, which is even more crestful than that meditation. The meditation on Aham Brahmasmi, which is supposed to be the traditional Jnana Marga approach. So the Acharya is going to give us even more direct approach as to the Viveka between the self and the non-self, where all these other methods which have all been lined up are all in the area of the non-self. So, beloved disciple, the question that you have put is of utmost importance and acceptable to the realized souls well versed in scriptures. It is like the aphorisms bearing a subtle meaning and understandable to him who craves for liberation. What is the question that the Sishya has asked? We can go back and look at it once again. The Acharya is taking him back to that question. What is the question? The question was, O Guru, what is bondage? How has it come? How does bondage survive? How is it to be destroyed? What is the non-self? And what indeed is the self? And what is the discrimination between self and non-self? Graciously bless me with the answers to these questions. And the Guru is coming back to that, having removed all the other supports which we could have easily taken by saying that somebody else can realize the self and pass it on to me. That's not going to happen. He said, you have to do it by yourself. Liberation cannot be obtained through Sankhya, yoga, ritual, and learning. All those methods out. Because he's going to give us a direct inquiry into the self and the non-self. Now, can you listen to great number of talks, including if this you consider as talk? And by the act of listening to talks, the Acharya says with a great degree of sternness that this brings pleasure. And in one of the translations, it is said pleasure to the speaker, not even to the listener. It is pointing out that I could have this vasana of having developed a desire to speak. and have great attachment to that. Therefore, it is bringing, the very act of speaking is bringing pleasure to me, rather than understanding that I am not giving the treasure to anybody. Treasure is already present in them. And the best thing that a talk or an indication can do is to point out to the treasure so that naturally one can settle in one's own treasure. He has removed any of these other supports, the Shastras, the Vedas, another person's support, and even meditation on Aham Brahmasmi. All these have been removed, and he has pointed out the treasure chest is inside you. And now he's going to another segment. Beloved disciple, the question that you have put is one of most importance and acceptable to all realized souls. This is the question we have to ask. What is the question? Time and again, go back to that. What is the question the Acharya is highlighting? Oh Master, what is bondage? How did it come? How does it survive? How is it destroyed? What is the non-self and what indeed is the self? What is the discrimination between self and non-self? These are the questions. What is bondage? How did it come? How does it endure? What is the non-self? What is the self? What indeed is the self? And what is the discrimination between self and non-self? That he is going to take up now. Having removed all other supports, he is going to bring us to the Mula Vivekam. Beloved disciple, this question indeed is going to take you to liberation. Listen to this reply with a calm and undisturbed mind, and your bonds will be cut asunder at once. By the listening to this Vivekachoodamani, the highest of discrimination, your bonds are going to be cut asunder. For that, don't allow your mind to go to any of the other sadhanas and worry whether you are doing other sadhanas properly or not. Just listen to me with clarity, with purity, that this is the best thing that could have happened to me. The Guru who is going to bring me the highest form of discrimination between self and non-self has indeed appeared in the form of the Vivekachoodamani scripture. And now I am going to listen to it with a clear mind so that I can imbibe what the Acharya is saying and practice the continuous meditation. We have to listen, imbibe what is the distinction between self and non-self, and do the meditation that is going to help us abide in the self. The primary means of obtaining liberation is Vairagya. In one paragraph, he is going to take us through the sadhana of the whole scripture, the basic, which he has covered earlier. The basic requirement is Vairagya, the Shat Sampatti of Samadhama. That is the next step. To keep away from that which is all perishable is the initial Vairagya required. Then the Shat Sampatti, Samadhama, Uparati, all those things, they come as the next support. Then, still later, comes the hearing of Vedantic truth. Once you have those qualities, you are having a calm mind. Listen to the Vedantic truth from what the Acharya is going to say. He is going to say the Vedantic truth about what? Not about everything, but about the self and the non-self. This is what he is going to tell us. So we have to listen to the Vedantic truth, and still later comes the contemplation on that truth. Finally comes the perpetual and prolonged meditation on the Brahman. So having crossed the non-self, you will have to constantly hold the self. This gives Nirvikalpa Samadhi. When the duality of self, non-self is broken through and the attention is abiding with the self, there is the Vikalpas due to the non-self is all completely eliminated. There is Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and through this is the strength required for direct realization of the Supreme Self is extracted through the experience of the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So what is the journey the Acharya is presenting before us? The journey is one of Vairagya. The journey is one of Shat Sampatti. We saw that in Shat Sampatti, from the senses, from the sensory object to the senses, to the turning inward to the mind, away from the karmas, then having ability to bear, or the, as Akka was putting, the patience and the tolerance that is required, and then the samadhi practice or the meditational practice, those are all going to be lined up. Once you have those, and we were saying that those who have come to Atma Vichara, in the initial practicing stage, the Vedantic teachings of the Samadhama and all, they will use aversion, that you should have aversion towards the sensory objects. And if you see through Muruganar's writing in Guru Vivekachoodamani, many a time the word aversion to sensory objects would be used. Now, once you have come to Atma Vichara, Bhagavan suggests avoiding both desire and aversion. That means the same samadhama are going to be done, but with an attention that does not have either desire nor aversion. That means we are going to practice the turning inward, but we are not going to use the emotional support of aversion to sensory objects, because that will be an addition to the ego, that will be an addition to the I, that now I am free of this area. Now I am not having this particular desire for this particular sensory object. But we are going to be, this sadhana of reading through Vivekachoodamani is going to alert to us that we are not going to be neo-Advaitins. We are not going to just end up saying that intellectual knowledge is true experience. No, we have to cross through the vasanas in the sensory area. But what is the instrument we are going to use? Are we going to use the emotional I to have aversion for some sensory objects? Perhaps not required. Once you have come to letting go of thoughts, the same gentleness, without like or dislike, you let go of thoughts. The same gentleness is enough to turn your senses inward. While walking in the road, you can see that your eyes are going towards your previous interests. You can catch it. Just that observation, it comes back. You don't need to have, this is something totally wrong. Why did I do this? Hereafter, I will not look there. No, that kind of strong emotional stoppage may not be required for those who are practicing self-enquiry, but then you should have an understanding that this does not mean that you can play with anything in the sensory area as you want and still have self-realization. That seems to be the import of those many who consider that having intellectual knowledge, having a certain feelings from time to time, that itself is self-knowledge. That trap of neo-Advaitic nature we will be avoiding by understanding this scripture, which says you have to let go of the sensory objects, you have to let go of the emotions, you have to bear with the sorrows that emerge even without your karmic requirements. There may be some previous things to be handled, which come as some degrees of pain or sorrow, which is overcome not by fighting with it or cursing it or bringing in emotions against it, but a gentle bearing will help you cross across to the self. So those are the sadhanas required. From there, listening to what is this discrimination between self and non-self in the Vedantic texts. Then practicing the meditation of Atma Vicharam. Then the Atma Vicharam culminating in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, that putting attention on the self, the vikalpas created by the non-self having subsided, you get prolonged experience of the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which gives you the strength required to realize the self and abide in it naturally. So this is the sadhana if you have any doubts about this particular part, because that seems to be the critical part that we have seen today, because the rejection of other supports you can understand, having been meditating on that for some time now. Why you can't rely on another, why you can't rely on discussions, why you can't rely on scriptures. If you want to come to the direct path, then what is the journey we are going to take? We should have Vairagya, we should have Samadhama, but both these we are going to practice with a gentle understanding that does not have like or dislike. If you look at something without like or dislike, that's going to drop definitely. That non-self will be transcended by the consciousness, which is not looking at it with either desire or with aversion. Both are not there in that. Then you turn inward, you keep dropping the non-self, holding the self. You will come to experience the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. The more and more experiencing of Nirvikalpa Samadhi will bring in that seeking of the Sahajanishta, the elimination of all the vasanas, and the direct experience of the Supreme Self. This is how the journey is panned out by the Acharya for us. The 70th verse in the original work says, this power of direct realization enables us, enables the discriminating soul to experience the bliss of liberation here and now. Such is the sadhana leading to liberation. That this is the course of the sadhana. Of course, the Acharya lays it out as a gradual path, not as a path of direct realization. The sudden realization path is not what he is suggesting. He is suggesting the same through understanding it gradually. But this is surely having eliminated the other non-self supports, having directly come into the Vedantic inquiry of what is the discrimination between self and non-self, having constantly held on to the self, you start experiencing the current of the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and the more and more experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi helps you clearly understand that there is not the remaining touch you are having with the non-self is not required. The self is everything, is the all in all. Why am I still having this vasana towards this? All those are burnt, and one abides in the self of all. And the next verse, the 70th verse, he says, this power of direct realization enables the discriminating soul to experience the bliss of liberation here and now. This is not something that is to be sought in some other place. This is not to be sought in some other time. That is, I am going to get realization some other time. What am I doing? I am only eliminating the ignorance in the present moment. I am only eliminating ignorance in the place wherever I am. I am here. I am now. I am not going to think of taking the body somewhere else. I am not going to ask the question of somebody, what are you going to do after this? What will you be doing after this? That question is meaningless in Atma-Vicharam. Because in Atma-Vicharam, however they come to the present point is the only question. What are they in the present moment? That is the only question. I don't ask of another the question, what are you going to do henceforth? After this particular event, what are you going to do? That is a meaningless question for an Atma-Vichari. Because the question is, what am I here? And I'm not going to ask, when are you going to reach a particular state of consciousness? Because the inquiry is, what am I now? So the liberation is always here and now. That is why Bhagavan, towards his Mahanirvana, when he is having that cancer in his arm, he hears men talking to themselves that Bhagavan is going to go away, Bhagavan is going to go away. And he keeps telling them that, where can I go? I am here and now. Where can I go? I am here and now. That Bhagavan is here and now. Wherever here is there, Bhagavan is there. Wherever now is there, Bhagavan is there. Because Bhagavan is the Atma Swarupa. He is the Hariyaditara Jivara Ahavarisa Guhayir Harivayirami Paramatman. He is the Paramatman present here and now. What are you going to do? Are you going to travel some other place? Are you going to do some other work tomorrow? That is not the question we ask of each other in satsang. When are you going to realize the self is not a question we are asked in satsang. In satsang on self-enquiry, one is only going to remind oneself of this treasure that is already present in us, and the lid of the treasure seems to be the ajnana, the not knowing of who we are here and now. That is the only thing. Not knowing who we are here and now is the only problem. So to make all efforts to know who we are here and now is the only solution. See the beauty of the sadhana. So all the other things that have been taken away from us, really nothing has been taken away from us. It is only searching in unnecessary long circuit areas the Acharya is removed for us. What is the lid that is covering? Not knowing what you are here and now is the lid covering the treasure that is within you. And the sadhana required to lift that lid is who am I here and now. That is why the self-realization in this path of Vivekachoodamani is always going to be here, is always going to be now, because Bhagavan, the self, is present here and now. Let's sit in Atmaucharam till about 8 o'clock, when we can listen to Akka. Revatima, you can set the time for us. Thank you. Namo Ramana. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we are meditating along with Nandakumar ji on the verses of Vivekachoodamani as translated and summarized, one may say, because Bhagavan has done a prose translation by Bhagavan Ramana into Tamil. And we have been today going through the segment of the Acharya telling us what is not necessary and what is necessary. The usual means, the traditional path is to put aside what is not necessary and to select what is necessary. Of course, Bhagavan often does only the latter. He focuses on what is necessary. He does not take us through what is to be rejected. And it is because of his positive focus in a way that if we are holding what is necessary, we continue to hold what is necessary, then automatically what is not necessary will drop away. However, to combat some of the major, probably the major aspects of attachments, once one has come to the spiritual path, the Acharya has negated the need to depend on scriptures or Vedas or a senior practitioner. All these have, or even the Veda Vakyas, all these have been put aside. But these are also questions we find Ganapati Muni in the beginning of Ramana Gita, and in also in the 4th chapter of Ramana Gita. In the beginning of Ramana Gita, he questions Bhagavan whether the discrimination between Satya and Asatya can be termed as jnana. And in the 4th chapter, he questions whether the Vakyas, the Mahavakyas such as Aham Brahmasmi, can be termed as jnana. And in all the places, whether it is these questions of the Muni or whether somebody else is asking about the nature of jnana, in those contexts also, Bhagavan clearly says that jnana is only direct experience of the self. All else can be a support to get back to that direct experience. It is not equivalent to the direct experience of the self. And Adi Shankara Bhagavad Pada also, in various other contexts as well, repeats this fact that nothing can be a substitute for abiding steadily in the self. Jnana vihine sarvamanena muktir na bhavati janmashatena is a very, very famous quoted portion of the Acharyas Bhaja Govindam, Jnana Vihine Sarvamanena. If one does not have that steady abidance or steady knowledge of the self, whatever else one may have achieved, it will not serve to liberate us. So this emphasis is to take us back to Anubhava, and to Anubhava alone. And to remember that anything else that may be called worthwhile is that which leads to Anubhava. Anything that leads to the experience of the self can be accepted. So what is this Vairagya? The Vairagya is to set aside anything that does not lead to awareness of the self. And what is that anything according to Bhagavan? Bhagavan says every thought takes one away from the self. So the Vairagya is only to put away all thoughts or to question each and every thought as it arises, says Bhagavan, and get back to the source. And of course, the self-control is required to support the Vairagya. And this self-control automatically comes to a large extent when there is Vairagya and when there is this Vairagya of self-inquiry, automatically the self-control will come, because when one is busy questioning who one is, who am I, there is the question of indulging in anything else. Can the unknown I indulge in anything? It cannot. It is only if I think that I am a particular entity that I will seek to either satisfy that entity through positive experiences or to comfort that entity by avoiding negative experiences. So the important thing is to get back to the self. Every bit of knowledge or scripture which Bhagavan has given us is for the purpose of establishing us in the self. So one must take the support of everything only to be established in the self. The self-control, everything. What is the purpose of all these things? The purpose is to abide in the self. The purpose is not to control the mind. The purpose is not to have Vairagya. The purpose ultimately is not even to have Nirvikalpa Samadhi, but to be steadily abiding in the self. So everything, one may say, there is a gradation of supports that we can find. And Bhagavan, of course, in many places he says that what the scriptures are useful, as Nandakumar said, for mind control. He says, Yennul karuttum manam adakkal, says Shiva Prakasham Pillai in his Ramana Padamalai. Yenbon Padam Vargave, Bhagavan has said, the essence of all scriptures is to control the mind. And then the next sentence he says, Unnai kana or noolen endru. Why do you need a scripture to see yourself or to perceive the self? Why do we need a scripture? Why do we need any other authority? Why do we need any other support? So Bhagavan is emphasizing that The self is actually so simple and direct that it can be experienced without any support whatsoever. The supports, ultimately, if we continue to hold on to them, may even become roadblocks. Swami Virajananda would often give a sweet example. Even saying that ultimately, even the support of self-inquiry has to be dropped. Ultimately, this one pole, he would say, this one pole is like the pole used by a pole vaulter to increase the altitude which he can clear and jump across. So the pole vaulter has this supple pole which he runs with, and then he catapults himself to the highest point of that pole and thereby goes across to the other side. So how that single pole, Swami Virajananda would say, is the self-inquiry which you can take and you get catapulted to the other side of the side which is transcending identity. But he would smilingly say, if the pole vaulter feels that, oh, this pole has supported me so much, it has allowed me to come up to this great height. Without its help, would I have come to this height? I could not have come. So it is not fair on my part to leave behind this pole. I must carry it to the other side. If he thinks so, neither he nor the pole will go to the other side. So the self-inquiry itself serves to give the vairagya. The self-inquiry itself brings about all the self-control, and the self-inquiry takes one to nirvikalpa, and the self-inquiry finally transcends the nirvikalpa and itself. Because Bhagavan says, again talking about jnana in Ramana Gita, he says, any experience which is intermittent, which comes and goes, even if one tastes or abides in the self. Vaidharva asks, what if one abides in the self during the sadhana? Bhagavan says, that is not jnana, that is abhyasa. That is still practice. So one has to practice. One has to practice. And the best form of practice is to be in the self. That's what Bhagavan says. The purpose of self-inquiry is to abide in the self, and it ensures that it happens by automatically cutting away all the draws. Everything that is unnecessary is automatically cut away by inquiry. So one need not even worry about what is necessary or what is not necessary. All that one has to do is to hold on to self-inquiry with ekachitta, and automatically it takes us across all the stages in the ripeness of time. The grace of the self-inquiry would establish us unwaveringly in the self. Om Namo Bhagavate Shriyam.
Namo Ramanakara.